What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. I am finally feeling better, and it's perfect timing because I got one of my favorite people on, Mr. Tony Arterburn. Tony, what's going on, dude? Thanks for coming, buddy.
Hey man, thanks for having me. It's great to be back. And you said you were feeling poorly. You had a fever?
I got COVID like 2.5 weeks ago, but I've been just been like nausea, all this weird stuff, like
Yeah.
headache. It's probably the CIA, honestly.
It's probably
My
it's
shirt says it was, I'm not saying it was the government, but it was the government. That's
probably
probably who did
sure.
it to me.
I was on Cash Daddies with Sam Tripoli once, and he was like, "You have a great voice." And I just gotten sick. I had like some
Yeah, yeah.
either it was, and what I told him was, I said, "Well, either I've got a sinus infection or I'm being murdered by gain of function. It's one of the two things." And I made Johnny Woodard laugh, and I thought that was it. Just don't know anymore. It's like we're exposed to all like the spike proteins and the bioweapons and
Yeah.
whatever they spray above us. Whatever
Right.
they're doing. I mean,
Well,
so
dude, I just read this John Mark's book, like searching for the whatever MK or Manchurian Candidate. I mean that one group in the CIA, the TSS, that's who Gottlieb started. He ran TSS group, and that's where they did all the crazy like exploding seashells or radios in your teeth and all this stuff. Like I know that it's a little conspiracy minded, but they could do literally what, like, if they wanted you to be nauseated for 2 weeks, they got something to do. Like they have a catalog, you know?
the heart attack gun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the famous one. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, did you find anything in that book about Jolly and West?
I just know Jolly West from the Chaos book, the
Yes.
Manson one. Yeah.
Him and Gottlieb, I believe they worked together on MK Ultra. Wasn't it Jolly and West that was the psychiatrist for, or was that Gottlieb that showed up to talk to Ruby? That talked to
No, it was Jolly West. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. I thought it was Jolly West, and just a weird. I mean, I don't hear enough about him. I just found him through the Chaos book. Tom.
Yeah. Well, there was that one story in there too about how like there was that Navy guy and he didn't remember, but suppose he was either like killed a 9-year-old girl or he woke up and he had her blood all over. And Jolly was the first one like at the scene and he took over, or he had connections with him in the past. I forget the whole story, but he was. I mean, all those guys were so beyond disgusting.
Yeah, just wonderful human beings.
uh,
Top notch.
Well, I mean, even Dulles' son, his son like tried to break away from Alan Dulles. So he went to Korea and his dad tried to get him a desk job. He wanted to be on the front line. He got shrapnel in his head. And then they sent him to, now I can't remember the doctor in Canada. I think that was McNeil University. But I mean, they tortured Alan and he was fine with it. He's actively searched it out to find a guy that could do that. Like, I mean, just like insane, dude, literally insane.
Well, I mean, you like lizard, like father kind of thing.
Like that. Oh, I like that a lot, dude. So I was going to start us off with the big news story of the Alfredo spill. Did you hear about this?
No, tell me all. I just made pasta, so tell me.
Well, that's why I also wanted to bring it up. So you lucked out. You didn't use Alfredo sauce, but a tractor trailer carrying Alfredo sauce opened up in Memphis on the highway. So it just had Alfredo sauce everywhere on the road. So you better not, if you're in Tennessee, guys, let me know if you can still get it.
I did not hear about it. Was this even on Drudge? I usually look.
No,
I look at Drudge because I want the CIA to tell me what it's thinking, and that's what I usually use Drudge for.
That is so. I'll put it on the screen here because I saved a photo of it. But look at all this, man. This looks crazy. Look at all that Alfredo sauce.
Oh, Lord, wow, that is something. New York Times. Okay, I see.
Dude,
they made it.
Could you imagine driving behind that and then getting it on your car? That's how you would start my day off horribly. I'm going to work. I go, oh my God. And there's Alfredo sauce all over my car.
There's probably 1,000 different jokes in there somehow with food and puns and what type of car you had, but I just can't think of one. I think maybe it's just the crunching numbers and gold and silver all day, and then I just kind of get a little dense.
Love it, dude. Well, that's a good. You're doing it, man. You're against the system. You got to. That's so awesome that you. And if you guys haven't checked out Tony's, what's your website for gold and silver?
You can go to wisewolfgoldandsilver.com or you can go to wisewolf.gold, either one. I've actually got two. It's kind of floating
Nice.
out there.
Well, what we were kind of talking about Bitcoin before we started the show, and I know you're more, you're very well studied in the precious metals, but I think I saw Bitcoin is going, it's kind of on a downward. I mean, it's been on one, but isn't it like, didn't it recently just go under 20 again?
Yeah, I did. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin for lots of reasons, and the decentralization of it, because it's finite, because, I mean, so far it's been a very reliable program, and
Yeah.
we don't know where it's from, who created it. I mean, you hear the name Satoshi Nakamoto. Is that a person? Is it a group of people? It's a mystery, and I've used Bitcoin. I've started buying Bitcoin ATMs in 2016.
Oh, you did? Dude,
Mhm.
you are such an entrepreneur. Wow.
I'm a crazy person because the first ATM that I bought, I lost. They didn't ever send it to me. So that was all the money that I had. And then I had to claw my way back up to try to get one more. And it worked out. I've got a few now, and I learned a lot about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I'm really thankful to whoever invented, because that helped me through. That's one of the reasons I was able to move to the Ozarks and
That's
uh,
amazing
while I did
story.
my gold and silver business, because it was just, I mean, touch and go for a while. And gold and silver is a hard business to start from the ground up
Mm.
because it's low margin. I mean, you're talking
Yes.
about fractions of a fraction, and it makes it look like you have money because people are like, look at all these deposits. And you're like,
You're right.
I only made like $5.
Yeah.
It's not what you think it is. And so, but luckily we've been sponsoring podcasts and alternative media. And then once people have used us, then they just always come back. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah. Well, I think when I first started buying silver on the internet, I remember I told my dad or older people, and they're like, "Well, how do you know?" So once you're right, I think once you find a provider that you're buying metals from, you just stick with that. Not a lot of jump. You're not going to get like a much better price anywhere. So it's kind of comes
We're,
down to, do you
yeah,
like the people?
we try to match the big boys if we
Yeah.
can. Sometimes, most of the time, we beat them, and that's
Wow.
because I now have Kinsey with me, which is AKA Fringe News, and we've been podcasting together for a couple of years. She went on InfoHorse with me when I would host over there, but we do the Wise Wolf Golden Crypto Show. And anyway, it's just a natural progression. Now she runs she brokers a lot of things for me, so she finds stuff that I don't find. Doing a great job.
That's
Kinsey's very
so
smart.
great.
So when you go through the website, you're probably going to talk to Ken's.
Okay.
Depends on how busy we are. If you call the number, you're probably going to talk to. We kind of have it split because I was unable to. And she's like, I don't know how you did this before me. I'm like, you know what? I honestly don't know. I don't know. Probably why my beard is gray and
Hi, dude, being a business. So now don't call his website just to talk to Tony. Buy some silver, then maybe he'll talk to you.
I talk to so many people throughout the day. I'm happy to talk, but the thing, I have to cut it short. If you don't want to, if we're not buying anything, and it's not because about money, it's literally I got to get to the next thing. So I get people to call me all the time. They're like, I
I
heard
bet,
you
dude.
on
I
the radio.
bet.
'Cause
Well, so the first topic I wanted to bring up was the European energy crisis, and I'm sure you saw some tweets, or maybe you didn't, but there. I saw a lot of tweets how these people the run a small bakery, their electricity bill. I'm making this kind of approximations. We'll say it was $1,000. It's gone up to like $9,000 in a month. That's the one tweet I saw. 9,000 pounds, I guess. But what do people? I mean, what is Europe going to do? Dude, like, what is Germany and all these places? What are they going to do?
Well, until they figure out that it's their own governments doing it to them on purpose. I mean, the desired result is austerity. The desired result is to drive you out of the marketplace of being able to take care of yourself. It's a controlled demolition. These are sanctions against you, the people, in the guise of sanctioning Vladimir Putin. And that's what they're, oh, well, Putin's price hike. And you have like what was it? The prime minister of Italy was like, well, you need to turn down your AC. Do you want AC or do you want democracy? These are all
Oh my God.
Spain was doing something similar. And I mean, these people are this is the great reset. I repeated on my show. And I was down in Dallas last week. I gave a talk to the young Republicans, and I used to be a Republican. So it's a
Nice.
great talk. They were very, I mean, I don't think they would had a speaker like me ever, because I'm saying, I was like, oh, well, the communism and the Illuminati have this, they celebrate the same day. I mean, you guys know the
Yes.
thing, right? And I was like trying to tell them about how the richest people in the world fund communism. That was my wheelhouse,
Right.
But I tried to stress to them that this is the Great Reset. You got to understand that the things that are happening, there's two words to always remember. It's called on purpose. They're doing it on purpose. And it's hard to wrap your mind around it, because you're like, well, wait a minute. I mean, don't they fear elections? No, they don't. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden has a terrible economy. He's got runaway inflation. He's got all these problems, domestic issues, crime is rampant, all this stuff. Does he do anything about it? No, he just continues to do the same things. It's Putin's price hike. And what is he talking about? I mean, lately, what's he talking about? If you guys can't have a real revolution, we've got the F-16s, a nuclear weapon. He's doing the Swalwell. The guy doesn't care. They don't care about elections, folks. Quit thinking that they do. I used to think so. I used to go, why don't they run, Tulsi Gabbard? She would get all the enthusiasm. They don't have to. They have demographics. You don't know what happened to this country the last 30 years, folks. You haven't seen the numbers. I've seen the numbers. It's a change. When people go, that's a racist, you're talking about population replacement. I'm like, Chuck Schumer, all these different Democratic leaders, Joe Biden himself, they all said they were doing it. They're changing. So they never have to worry about elections.
Right.
Because they have locked in. That's not a racist thing. That's just pure logic and mathematics. So, well, that's one part of it. The other part of it is they're on a team, and their team says, you're with us with Davos, the World Economic Forum, the world's writ BlackRock. You've got environmental social governance, ESG, you got all this stuff. They have already chosen that. I mean, we literally are being run by people. It kind of goes back to, and I always give this example. I know it's kind of ad nauseum, but Strobe Talbot, and I've never gotten over this. Strobe Talbot was the Secretary of State for Bill Clinton.
Okay.
While he was Secretary of State of the United States, Strobe Talbot said that the nation state was irrelevant, becoming irrelevant. So they believed in world government, erasing borders. And I'm thinking, the Secretary of the State says the state is irrelevant. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They don't believe in the country.
Yeah.
There is no white hats, folks. I mean, I literally, if you ever think, and I'll say this in the most nicest of terms, if you ever think that your family doesn't take you seriously, just remember, folks, that I have people in I have people in my phone like Donald Jeffries. I mean, like Jack Allen, okay, like Billy Ray Valentine, like James Perloff, and I still get people in my family that text me QAnon links about how
really
they won't listen to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I could try to convince people all I want, but it's just that I just step back sometimes, Jack, and go, well, we live in a crazy time. I don't like even want the stuff that I talk about to be true, because it's kind of a nightmare. But yeah, just unprecedented time. This is planned austerity. Get back to your question about Europe. What are they going to do in the gas prices or crisis when they have, a hard winter, which I'm sure that they're engineering with their happy little chemtrails and stuff. And by the way, if you look at the history of chemtrails over the last couple of years, internationally, it's all NATO countries. I mean, I know that they do it everywhere, but I'm talking about people always, oh, they're everywhere. I know they're everywhere, but like in a concentrated, systematic way where I see pictures on like Instagram. I follow the chemtrail trackers. They're like I looked up and I was like, what's the common thread of all these countries? And they're all NATO.
Interesting.
So they're gearing up. They're just gearing up to remake the world. You're not in on it. So it's like George Carlin, and it's a big club and you ain't in it. You're not in on it, folks. They're just remaking the world. Don't mind us. We're just upending the world. That's what they're doing.
Well, in the weather modification, I did a show on harp. I think angels don't play this harp. I don't know if you've ever seen that or read that book, but it's just fascinating. Like I showed my friend, I have him on sometimes, and I told him about weather modification, and he didn't believe me, of course. And then there's an article from the Olympics when they were in Beijing, how they were seeding, and he was blown away that like this is a real thing. And I bet if you polled 99% of America, they would not believe you, and then you could show them that, and they'd maybe be a little.
They're not even trying anymore. It's like, I
Yeah.
think they would try to do it and hide it a bit, but now it's just like, no, you should have seen the worst I've ever seen it was on election day 2020 here in the Ozarks. I mean, I took pictures, Jack. I've got it.
Really?
And I take pictures over my farm all the time where I'm like, I'll talk to people like, oh, they do fly a lot. I'm like, look at this. It's grid zones and like
Yeah.
patterns. I mean, they're like crisscrossing and they stay and then they become clouds. And I'm like, I'm not, you don't have to be a genius to figure it out. They're doing something without your permission.
Yeah.
You should be concerned about. People are like, well, I'm concerned about what the Chinese were doing in the Wuhan lab. Yeah, I guess so. In conjunction with the NIH, it's always a Republican talking point that we're going to go get the communist Chinese. But I'm like, yeah, but don't we fund them? I mean, we give. Do you realize, Jack, that we give China foreign aid?
No, I did
It's a
not
real
realize.
thing. I remember I did a show about this when I had my first radio show in Dallas. I didn't make a lot of friends because I brought up some very inconvenient things, but I was like, we give China foreign aid. And one of the congressmen that sponsors it was like, I think it's absolutely worth it. But then I was doing the actual numbers. I'm like, well, we have actually ceded them trillions of dollars through trade deficits. Trillions, literally. We just transferred the wealth. That's what a trade deficit is. A lot of people don't get that either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that have been happening in the last 50 years. They're systematic. They're on purpose. They're a plan. Because I find no evidence of them making a mistake in the plan, or a mistake in the system where they would help us. So it's clearly on purpose.
Oh, I like that. Well, is it Perloff's book, or maybe it's in Don Jeffrey's book? If it wasn't a conspiracy, eventually we would get a win every now and then. I don't know it's one of those books.
I think both of them have talked about. That's actually that comes from, I believe, Joe McCarthy.
Interesting.
And then Gary Allen, who wrote None Dare Call It Conspiracy, referenced it.
Yes.
I believe that's where that comes from. But that's absolutely right. I mean, if they were just stupid, if our leaders were just incompetent, then every once in a while they'd make a mistake that would help us, but they don't. And that's the game, right? Is it just never helps you. You just get a little less free, a little less prosperous every single day.
A little less free. That is for certain.
Every day.
And even just add to how about the elections and politicians. I mean, could you imagine 50 years ago, the governor of New York saying, if you're a Republican, go to Florida, leave New York City or leave New York. I mean, that no one would ever have done that, ever.
No, it was all about building unity. But like I said, they don't need to anymore. They don't need the unity. They brought it in. They imported it. And they have the school systems. I mean, think of that is actually controlled by the globalist left, whatever you want to call them. This is even like a political designation, just the ruling class. The ruling class is globalist. Okay. Can we establish that?
Agreed. Yeah.
And I would say too, for the QAnon people, there is no white hats. And I have evidence of this because every governmental program, project, department, all controlled by globalists. I see no evidence, even the military. I mean, now the rank and file, you'll have some Republican, conservative, Christian people there. But I'm talking about the people that run stuff. And even in the departmental heads, I see no evidence. So that's why they don't care anymore, Jack. They're beyond politics now. We're beyond politics. We're beyond where we feel like we have a release valve, we can go to the polls and all that stuff. What you're talking about now is local, county, state level. That's where the fight is. I tried to tell that to the young Republicans. I was like, hey,
what'd they say? Or I guess they're not talking back, but what do you think they're
I got a lot of great feedback.
Nice.
And I said, look, we're not going to agree on everything because I've gone further, and I'm like, hey, and the thing about listening to me is you can possibly get some good ideas, but I've got the mark now. Like I can never run for a serious office because I've talked about things that people don't really want to. They want to talk about them, but they also want to be political. I had a political hack one time tell me, he goes, you know what, Tony, you're just not political. I said, yeah, I know, I'm a man. I want to talk about things. I want to fight for things. I believe in things. I don't need to memorize my stances. One of my favorite things when I ran for office was ask me a question. I love it. Get a room full of people. Ask me anything because I already know what I believe. I don't have to think, okay, what was I want to triangulate this demographic, And I think people are sick of politicians more so than any time in our history. They're despised. I mean, Congress has a a lower approval rating than liver cancer. I mean, it's bad, man. It is bad. So
Well, according to Trudeau, that's because of climate change. That's why everyone's so upset at politicians. Did you see that?
yeah, I know. Everything's about climbing. What was that? I saw it, and this had to be somebody's spoof, but it made me laugh, or maybe it's real because I can't tell anymore.
Yeah, you can't tell anymore.
But somebody was like, "Don't shake your duvet. Don't try to fluff your blankets too hard in the morning because climate change can give you a heart attack or something." Like, because all these things. I mean, it's clearly climate change, Jack.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely, dude. That's such a my God. I guess that's the next part of the next move or the next pandemic. But it's just it. And I saw another funny tweet. It was like, amazing. This all started with an autistic girl who didn't go to school one day. That's
Right,
what
it has
that's.
domino at the end, and it's just
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Yes.
regret.
And I'm
Yeah.
talking about Greta for people
Oh,
who
well,
don't
of
know.
course, yeah,
Yeah.
Greta. Yeah, it just these people that they choose to. So, like, Greta isn't talking about the military industrial complex, like stop all these bombings and wars, because that's the big polluters. She's
Right.
going to the people who create the most pollution to tell them to make sure that me and you get put back into the Stone Age. Like, that's what it's all about. I mean, was Greta talking about cleaning up the plastic from the oceans? Or what about the third world factory runoffs into our water supply system? Or the communist Chinese, you want to talk, or the huge polluters?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where 90% of the plastic in the ocean comes from the third world.
Absolutely.
A lot of times when you see, I know that, and then you should, cut the little rings off your six packs and stuff so it don't, but that garbage usually ends up in sophisticated landfills inside our continent. It doesn't end up in the ocean. But the third world, they just throw it out. They just take it off barges and throw it out.
Yeah.
So Greta doesn't talk about that, though. She's talking about first world deindustrialization to make sure that we, get brought down a peg or two, right?
Right.
So
that's a great point, though. You can't even drink the water in Vietnam or all these places. They only drink out of plastic water bottles, and you think
yeah,
that they're just throwing it out.
just
And
throw
in
it.
Africa and
You
stuff.
should see, like, when I went to Kosovo, I'd never seen that before. Like, when I was 20 years old. And I volunteered for my first deployment. And they were going to Kosovo. So I volunteered first day. And they just had trash piled up. And I thought, is this because of war? And the guy was like, no, that's where stuff goes. Like, I was like, is that because of the war? And I was just confused. Like, there is no, like, trash pick. Or at least there wasn't then. And
Right.
I hope they have it now. But the same thing for Afghanistan, same thing in Iraq. It's just where trash goes, pretty much where it goes. It goes everywhere. It'll eventually find its place in the water system. I remember you had those playing cards in Iraq. I don't know if you remember this, but they had a deck of cards.
Okay.
And the deck of cards were passed out to the frontline troops to recognize the most wanted
okay.
Saddam's regime. And one of the guys was Chemical Ali. He was the chemical agent guru guy, that Saddam went to make his weapons of mass destruction. Well, I guess what Chemical Ali did is he took the shipments from the U.S. government and signed for them.
Right.
That was Chemical Ali. But I stayed a night in Chemical Ali's house. And that was a reward for, just, working in 150-degree heat, and every once in a while they rotate, because he had an air conditioner, and you could go stay there for a night in Chemical Ali's house. And I took a biography of U.S. Grant. But like if you want to get in the Tigris River, you certainly can. It's got a fast current, but you can get out there. And I walked out to see the Tigris River, and I swear on my life, as I was debating whether I was going to get in the river or not, an upside down ice skate floated by. And I thought, I'm in Iraq, don't know where the nearest ice rink is.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if there's a foot attached to that thing.
That's a fair point too.
It was just an ice skate going by, man. And
so you didn't go in?
No, I went back into Chemical Ali's house and finished up my biography on Ulysses S. Grant. That's what I did. I just read books and tried not to die in Iraq. That was my mission.
The experience you've had has probably been insane.
Yeah, well, it makes for good radio if you survive.
Yeah. Well, It does. So before the show, we were talking a little about Taiwan and China, and so I always try to bookmark stuff that I find is interesting. So I'll just read this because I want much more, but I just related to Nancy Pelosi. So there was an article, or her and her husband, they sold on August 2nd $4 million worth of Nvidia stock, who makes those chips in Taiwan, for anyone listening, and that was a month ago. Today, Nvidia stocks falls 5% after, I think, falling even like 10% earlier. So, again, these two are just stock geniuses. They can read the market, they read the trends, they know how to capitalize. And that's could be the only reason why that they had such good idea what was going to happen to Nvidia stock.
Well, he's smart enough to, and I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi's husband. He's smart enough to pick the number one stocks and always be right, but not smart enough to pass the breathalyzer.
Right.
Right? He can't pass the breathalyzer. Yeah, I mean, this is again what happens at the end of a civilization as we know it. The world. I don't know if the world's coming to an end. It might be, but we're definitely seeing the end game of just so much corruption. Historically, I mean, yes, you've had the Roman Empire, you've had, the British Empire. You've seen corruption and decline and fall, but nothing like this. I mean, we out in the open, our elites flaunt it. They're like, we're exempt from everything we do, but you're not. And it's like, oh, hey, we shut down your businesses in 2020. Trump said you're not essential. Put Anthony Fauci in charge of the country, signed the executive order, never undid it. And by the way, that executive order that Trump signed on Friday the 13th, March 2020, that funded all the little petty potentates and governors that he tweeted against, but they were funded by him, right?
Right.
So all that 2020 says you're not essential, shuts down small business, in your face says casinos are good, churches are bad, big box good, small business bad. And then after all this, they say, now, I know that you're bloody and dying, and I know that you need help, so we're going to send you some help. We're going to send you the angel of mercy, the death angel. We're going to send you 87,000 IRS agents to make sure that you just never get back up again. We realize that it'd be so painful for you to get off your feet or get on your feet again, and we just don't want you to have to go through that. We've hit you with the car, now we're going to back over you a couple of times, and they're doing it in your face, man. I mean, they clearly, we talk about Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, hey, you can't, the water doesn't, no showers, no nothing. The water system was completely corrupted. And they make fun of people like us that are like, hey, filter your water, get a good Alexa pure water
filter. That's a great point.
System. They make fun of us. Oh, you want to take all the chemicals out of the water. Yeah. Take the chemicals out of the water. What? It's always made fun of in popular culture. But you look at Flint, Michigan. I mean, everything that has been done to us it's laughing. We laugh at it.
Yeah.
But it's criminal. It's a betrayal of the highest order. We gave that doofus over in Ukraine, his little T-shirt actor man, Zelensky, $60 billion, the entire defense budget of Russia. To do what? He just asked for more money. He's always posing on something or going on some award show. So our leaders hate us. Charlie Robinson tweeted that out today. He's like, I don't know if you guys have noticed. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but he still lists all the little things that we give to other countries. And he's like, your government hates you. Yes, you're in the way. They just hate governing you. You're just always, needing something like them to do their jobs. But it just really truly isn't. So we're living in such insane times. I don't even know what to make heads or tails. I've literally, Jack, I have thought sometimes because of Lindsey Graham. It was Lindsey Graham. I was watching him talk, and I actually stopped what I was doing and started to really question whether or not I was in reality or whether because it's so insane. I mean, we have leaders that are calling for the assassination of the head of a nuclear power like Vladimir Putin. I mean, Lindsey Graham, Lady Lindsey, a lady. He's a Lady Lindsey. He really wants to have war. He loves war. I don't know if it compensates for something for him or he's just kind of Spartan like the Spartans were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's a
but
Spartan.
he's a very much Spartan. In this, look up your history, folks. But he's calling for the murder of a world leader. And I was thinking, Gorbachev just died. Can you imagine Ronald Reagan?
It's a great point.
Was anybody in the U.S. during the Cold War? Was any sitting U.S. senator talking about murdering Mikhail Gorbachev? I mean, well, no, and Reagan famously got in trouble because he thought he was off air, and he was making a joke. He's like, "I've outlawed Russia, and the nukes are on their way." It was a joke, and then he was
Okay.
off air, but they didn't. I mean, they're coming out as policy. Murder is policy, and I'm thinking, we got a problem. For those, and I don't want there to be a problem. I'm not an alarmist. I'm certainly not gonna, a lot of my predictions, Jack, unfortunately, I lose audiences for them. It's like I lost a huge audience in 2020 because I told them what was going to happen. I'm sorry.
So you predicted Trump losing in 2020?
I didn't predict him losing. What I thought was he wasn't going to make it on the first day. I thought he'd have to have some kind of it might go to the House of Representatives. I thought about that back in 2019. I'm like, whatever he's probably going to do, he'll definitely. So the thing is, if you're looking into the election, it doesn't make any sense because Joe Biden can't put 4 people in the room. Trump's got people on boats and flags, and there's all this stuff going on. And so you think, oh, this is a slam dunk. I didn't think that. I thought, okay, because even the Trump campaign was triangulating. They're like, okay, so suburban upper income females want me to wear a mask, so I got to wear a mask, and we can't have a rally. So they were triangulating, trying to get these different demographics. But I just thought it's not enough because the Democrats have what I've known for years, which is they've been building this permanent ruling voting bloc.
I like that.
And again, Trump didn't win the popular vote in 2016. He won the presidency by switching. It was basically 80,000 votes spread over 4 states, and that was those swing states like Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And so it was a swing. He made it through those states, and I was like, so if you have 4 more years and you have what was that 2.4 more million Democrats voters on the rolls that you import. I mean, you're talking about such a thin margin of victory.
Yeah.
I thought, well, he has the campaign. Joe Biden's not running one. And it was just not it was my friend Billy Ray Valentine is a smart guy. I'm starting to really side with him that it was just like, and I know they had the 2,000 mules and all the stuff, but I get that. But, they've been cheating for a long time. But, again, how much of that matters when like California? Jack, can California ever go red? Can it, and I say red, I hate those colored. That's such a psyop that they did that. Yeah. But could it ever go conservative?
No, I don't think so.
It's gone.
Yeah,
it's gone. Like that. That was Reagan, Nixon came out of California.
Insane.
It's gone. I mean, you can't have a competitive race in California. California is the future of what the U.S. will look like if it doesn't break up. And Texas is the very same. Texas will be a blue state,
right?
From Texas, right. I know this very well. It's not. You can't do much when you're talking about changing the population demographics, how people vote. You don't even need campaigns anymore. I mean, does Gavin Newsom need a campaign? Does he need a campaign? He does. All he has to do is show up. Yeah. And that's the thing is that once a state, Texas used to be a Democrat state. It was when I was a kid.
Really?
It was a blue dog Democrats. You had this was left over from the era of Lyndon Johnson. And so Ann Richards was my governor when I was in 5th grade, and she was beaten by one George W. Bush, but it was a close race. And that's when Texas started to become more Republican.
Interesting. So
the thing is, states used to be able to change. Like, so you could have a Democrat state go Republican like Texas. But see, in the modern era, folks, once a state goes blue, the modern Democratic blue, it's gone. I mean, you're never getting it back. You can't undo that. And that's because there's just a permanent voting block. I mean, and I'm open to suggestions on what that would mean, but or what the future would hold. And if I'm wrong, I'm open to be wrong. I don't see any evidence that I am.
Right. Well, dude, I always like looking at the electoral maps of like Nixon and Reagan, but I remember this story. I think it's in the Devil's Chessboard, how Alan Dulles is helping Nixon just run his campaign before he's going after an incumbent that's been there for like 30 years. And supposedly these pranksters not affiliated with Nixon's campaign called everybody in the district to say how this guy was secretly a communist or a socialist. And that, I think, and then Nixon upset this incumbent because of that. He got in trouble for that. But it's just amazing that that worked in 50s California, because I can only visualize Californian today. If you call people and say Gavin Newsom's a communist, that won't affect, but back then it was huge.
Yeah, Nixon had two opponents. He had Jerry Voorhees in 48.
Yeah, that's who it was. Jerry Voorhees. Yeah.
He crushed Jerry Voorhees. He was 46, because in 48 Nixon took on Whittaker Chambers. But he also ran against Helen Hagen Douglas, and he called her pink right down to her underwear. I mean, that was funny for back. But let's get back to China and Taiwan.
Oh yeah, back, yes. Because you were talking. It was really, you were talking like liberal.
This is what I'll do. It's like I'm doing my own show.
Dude.
Get stream of consciousness and.
It's fine, dude. Yeah. So, because you were talking like liberal world order and a few other things you were saying. So, if you can jump back into that zone, I would love to hear.
Yeah, man. So, this is I didn't expect this to happen with Taiwan. I kind of thought, because I read that we'd already ceded Taiwan. So when Nixon opened China in 72 with Henry Kissinger, they told Mao Zedong, they said, look, they didn't put it in writing, but they said it was a verbal promise that Formosa, which is also Taiwan, where the Chinese nationalists had fled to with Chiang Kai-shek, would be one China. Because that was like our Cold War ally. And we flipped it. We went to bringing the Chinese. That was a price that we paid for bringing the Chinese into our sphere to put a wedge against the domination of the Soviet Union at the time.
Okay.
That was part of what Nixon and Kissinger called triangular diplomacy.
Ooh,
so this was a plan. In the same time, they wanted to build a peace system with the Soviet Union called détente. So they were like keeping the Soviets at bay, building a relationship with China. The goal for them was to, at least it's on paper, was to end the Cold War, or to bring it to a peaceful resolution without a nuclear holocaust. In 79, January 1st, 1979, Jimmy Carter put that in writing. You can go look up the document. The U.S. government basically said that we recognize China, one China, and that Taiwan, in so many words, belongs to China, and that, sovereignty should be respected for states in dispute should be decided by the people. But we put it in writing, and that we had agreed to a one China policy. If you recall, after the 2016 election, the first world leader to call Donald Trump was the president of Taiwan.
Really?
And the media hit the roof. They're like, you're not supposed to talk to the leader of Taiwan. Every news agency, I remember this. It was a big deal. You're not supposed, you could do this, is inflammatory.
Yeah.
I mean, what's he thinking? He's not supposed to talk to the leader of Taiwan. All these people that are like, oh, we're so liberal. We're so inclusive. We're for freedom. But they love the social credit score, organ harvesting government of the communist party. The liberals love that stuff. It's just death. They love it. But that's been the policy. And then all of a sudden, Nancy Pelosi, the third in line for the presidency, believe it or not, folks, she is, just takes a government jet, lands over there in the face of the Chinese. The Chinese had to go, what are they doing? I mean, because we have given the Chinese everything. We literally rolled out the red carpet and said, here's all of our manufacturing. Here's most favored trade status for a nation. We did that exactly 90 days after 9/11. George W. Bush lost 1/3 of all manufacturing jobs, over 56,000 factories during his presidency. During his presidency, they tried to cook the books and say, we haven't lost manufacturing because we have fast food. And they sandwiches. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, they're making the thing, which is your sandwich. So they're part of manufacturing. I'm not kidding. So he gave it all away. And then all of a sudden, this is what bothers me. Why? What's the point here? I mean, we built them up. We gave them everything. we did these bio, warfare experiments with them at Wuhan with Anthony Fauci and the NIH and Francis Collins, all these people. So I don't know, Jack. What bothers me is that we've got a powder keg just waiting to get lit in Europe with Vladimir Putin and Ukraine. If you guys know the history of that, that is just a blatant in-your-face provocation by the U.S. government to try to get Vladimir Putin to do something. I'm not saying Vladimir Putin's a great guy. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that's what whatever it is going on, folks. The U.S. government, or whatever it is now, wants it. So they want these two-front thing happening at the same time. It's a change in policy, but I don't think to protect the U.S. or like, oh, we're just really getting back to our roots. I don't think it's any of that stuff. I think this is something else. And I was talking to you off air about the idea that it gets thrown around, the liberal world order, right? You get thrown out, we're going to protect the liberal world order. It's something that General Mad Dog Mattis told Trump about the liberal world order.
Okay.
He would explain to him, you can't dissolve NATO. You can't bring the troops home. We have a liberal world order. You have to stay out on, you have to have 700 bases in 132 countries and all this other stuff. So there's a liberal world order, but now there's the BRICS nations. There's Brazil, Russia, India, China.
What did you call it?
It's called the BRICS. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. BRICS nations. They want to get together and they want to create their own currency standards, their own gold standards. Because gold right now is not what it is. I mean, it's manipulated to the highest order. It's dominated by Western banks, dominated by the London bullion houses and stuff. So Russia knows that the price of gold is not real. It should be way higher than it is, based off the loss of the purchasing power of the dollar and everything else. So all these fiat currencies, they manipulate gold to keep it low. Same thing with silver. They work around the clock. So the BRICS nations, I think, they want to reset it. They're like, hey, we have all this gold. We have all this silver. We have all these commodities. You guys are screwing us over because our currencies don't dominate. So we don't care. Like, we don't care that we lose the status of our currency. We'd rather have the commodities. And the U.S. needs its fake money. It needs monopoly money to continue. So the only way out, I think Martin Armstrong's program, the Socrates AI program, and I just learned about, Martin Armstrong this last year. I don't know where I've been. But
I don't know who that is.
Well, he's got this. He went to jail for it because they were like trying to get him to tell him how he predicted so many things in the marketplaces with his program, but he never told him. So it's his thing is he's predicting. He's like the West, all the governments of the West. That's why they're arming, and that's why they got all this stuff going on. It's because they need a war to save their currency. They have to have a worldwide war to save it because you got unfunded liabilities like you've never seen. You've got the loss of purchasing power of the dollar. It's the end game for fiat currency. And for those who don't know what fiat means by decree. So a fiat currency is like, hey, it's like Dumb and Dumber. And this is IOU. This is better than money. It's like you give somebody an IOU. It's from the government. It's not really an IOU per se. It's just a debt note. And it doesn't, used to, you could take that note and you go to a window and they give you some gold for it or some silver for it. And that was to ensure that there was some accountability in the money supply, but they took that away. And so we've just been a free fall ever since. And people think prices have gone up. That's not what happened. I mean, a $20 gold piece from 1933 buys the same amount of product that it did then. It's within the margin of error. What happened is you untethered that dollar from gold and it just went into the dumpster. So it only has about 2 cents to 1 cent of purchasing power that it did in 1933.
So I like that's interesting. I never heard that about the BRICS. And see, I like those stories and that thinking, like maybe there's some real animosity, but I just struggle, just like how you were talking about how these bankers funded communism. It's so hard for me. Like, I want that to be the case, that Brazil is trying to buck against the dollar, but it's just hard for me to believe that because, as you can understand, they've been on the same side for so long. I can't tell who's, is there an actual fight or is it fake?
Well, Israel just dumped a bunch of their dollar holdings and traded them for yuan.
Did that? I think I saw, I saw something about it. Our great ally. I saw something with that.
It's our #1 ally. It's like,
Yes.
I'm like, what you got? I never saw an Israeli troop when I was in the Middle East. They were not there. What are y'all
And you
talking about?
and
You
we
know,
were there for them. So
right?
yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's I never saw one ever. It's just
Fascinating.
like that's so silly. I mean, that's such a Republican, Christian Zionist kind of thing to do. But yeah, and it's funny. All the stuff that Trump. I'll get off the subject, but all the stuff that Trump did for Israel. And the first phone call that Biden got was from Benjamin Netanyahu to congratulate him.
Right. Right.
That's about how it goes.
Well, dude, did you just so I talked about this a few nights ago, but on Town Hall, have you ever they're like a Twitter account, Town Hall.
Yeah.
They're such a boomer conservative, but the article the guy wrote, I forget the guy, one of the top journalists or whatever, and he wrote Biden administration ignoring calls from Israel.
Yeah.
Like that's like look at he's an idiot. Look how dumb Joe Biden is not supporting our ally. And I'm just thinking, dude.
It's so, and you're right. It's kind of a boomer. It's kind of, and like at my generation, especially combat vets are like, what are you talking about?
That's
like,
interesting.
That's so weird that you think, and if you get into the history and alternative media, I love James Perloff, man. I've had James Perloff. I was on my radio show, which is connected to Town Hall and some of these other deals. And I remember his last 3 minutes on air as we were ending up the show live on air. He was like, and he goes, and Israel's not God's plan. It's a Rothschild's Israel. It's just, I love James.
That's hilarious.
This is so great. I was smiling the whole time. Like, oh man, I can imagine people out in radio land, because if you want to get big in conservative talk, you got to have that line. I'm sorry. It's just what it, I'll never be big. I love the idea. I like to be free to talk about ideas, and it just comes from a place of being, no, see, the thing about Israel is you can be a fan of the Jewish people and their faith and all the stuff that they do. You can be a fan. I mean, you could, but no one ever asked me, hey, Tony, what's your stance on Ecuador? You support Ecuador? I'd be like, well, that's such a random question. It's like, are you a fan of Kazakhstan?
Yeah. Right.
You support Kazakhstan's right to exist, right? I'm like, sure.
Anti-Kazakhstan a night?
Are you anti-Kazakh? So that's the thing is when people you support Israel, I'm like, it's a nation state that has its own interests.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thing is. And I get where you're, because I kind of understand the intellectual argument to get you to this point, but it's so flawed and so full of holes. You got to think about it.
Right. That's interesting though, that because I was wondering, I think about that. How do our active or former active duty people feel about, did that ever come up when you were, would that ever come up when you were over there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because wonder what, we never see everybody else. We see the Australians. Here's the Canadians are here. All these people, and the Israeli lobby, they're just really big on getting us over there. I mean, look, the Israelis have a vested interest in keeping chaos in the Middle East, because terrorism doesn't really threaten Israel. What threatens Israel is nation states. You have the 68 war or 67 war and the 73 war, the Yom Kippur war. That was both threatening by nation states. So the goal, I believe, of their foreign policy is to create chaos and instability. That's why they're always hitting targets in Syria and Lebanon. And that's why they wanted for regime change in Iraq and sanctions on Iraq. Saudi doesn't threaten Israelis. That's why they're really, and of course you can go into the whole Sabbaty and Frankist thing, like David I researched. But the Iranians, they just want instability. So it's kind of like a chaos project. And so I get it. If I'm then, I'm a little nation, so I'm sticking up for them. I guess that's but it's my country that has to, like you're talking about the United States, that has to conduct that foreign policy. And that takes lives, and it takes treasure, and it takes the spirit out of my country. So I'm not for those wars, and even I fought in them, but it doesn't serve anybody in the U.S. But the Israeli lobby has been a big force. And of course, Trump said that they should rule Congress. You remember that quote?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Zion Don. But it's amazing though. Like I just thought of this now. It's almost like how you said you get asked like, oh, you don't support Israel, and it's almost like the right-sided virtue signaling. Like, oh, you don't support Black Lives Matter. Are you a racist? It's like it's just on the other. It's like their chance to be like, oh, look at, the squad, these anti-Semites or whatever. It's just the same, everyone loves to have an easy, virtuous win, or at least on the internet. But yeah.
Yeah, it's lazy.
Yeah.
To have the talking points that are disseminated from the think tanks are that one, they're meant to neutralize you, to keep you in a box. It's basically like Fox News writ large over everybody's mind. I mean, Fox News is so useless, and it's harmful because it gives you a certain degree of what's actually happening, and then just completely collapses it with a bunch of nonsense, And then I talked about that with my talk. I said, does anybody remember when Newt Gingrich went on Fox News and said George Soros is funding these DA? They cut him off. They're like, you can't talk.
Yes.
Yeah. You can only talk about the things that he makes possible. So it's a game, but you can't actually go after the funding of the things. And I go, that's what you guys that are young, you need to understand that what you see. I even talked about Plato's cave and recognizing what is true and what is not, and the wider picture. So, I mean, we just people, what you see in the game is like, oh, Democrats are bad. Yeah, they're pretty bad. But you got to understand, defeating the Democrats like that doesn't solve the problem, because then you're left with the Republicans who have the exact same bosses.
Yeah.
It does not help. And I'm sorry, I didn't make the rules. I want there to be change. I don't want the corruption, but they have the exact same bosses. What really the best analogy that I've ever gotten from all my study is that it's just we, the people of the planet, versus the plutocrats. It's the world's richest, wealthiest people. It has nothing to do with their wealth. I'm all about making money. I'm talking, this is like generational trillions in holdings. The people that are the Davos set, the World Economic Forum, the banksters. These are people that are changing the world, and well, they've stunted our growth. Mm-hmm. They've kept us in perpetual fear. They kept us in perpetual warfare. They've stopped inventions. They've stopped everything is they create false and controlled oppositions. And this is who we, the people, the planet, need to recognize that our reality is a construct cooked up by psychopathic bankers.
I like that. Yeah. I like that.
Sorry. I wish it was more simple. I mean, I do, Jack, I could have 1 million followers in about 6 months.
You absolutely could.
Saying, because I can do broadcasts. I've been doing broadcasting for years. I could say Donald Trump's the Messiah. We're going to take it back and show up at this rally. We're going to stop the Democrats cold. I mean, it sounds good on paper, but if you actually think about it, it's like no. It's bigger than that. And your team, the thing is that the teams are what's killing us too. Because when our team does bad, well, we just cover up for it because we're watching Breitbart. We got we're Newsmax, and it's just all nonsense. Like, now they're going to lay the blame of I don't know, we're on your channel. So they're going to blame the warp speed on the orange man.
Right.
And I'm like, I saw this coming a mile away. I don't know why everybody was, it's a miracle. And Mark Levin's like, let him have the credit.
I like that Mark Levin voice. Very good.
I've been on. I used to follow Mark Levin on Freedom 1160 in San Antonio, and I interviewed Mark once. He's very kind.
Wow.
Yeah, the station actually is like, hey, you're our only live host, because they would just rebroadcast most of it.
Yes, yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'll interview Mark, and it was a fun conversation. We talked about his book Unfreedom of the Press, and he was very kind. So I don't want to get but he came out and said that about Trump, and I thought, man, I'm just looking like, going to be not very far away. We're going to be. I don't know why. I'm not a genius or anything. I don't know how.
Yeah. I do like you were talking about the younger generation, and I do, even among like the older and like the boomer group, more and more people they're able to say both. They'll say both sides are corrupt, but they won't be able to let go of like Trump, or they won't be able to let go of certain characters. So that it is a step forward in my mind. Like more and more people, and they're willing to admit that a lot of these guys are all liars, but they still hold on to this hope. And I know that's like, it's sad, but you need to let go of that hope that none of these guys are looking out for you.
Well, he's like, Congress has, like I said earlier, got like a 7% approval rating, but it has a 96% or higher return of incumbency.
Yeah.
So you don't like it overall, but you like your person, which I don't believe either. I
Yes.
don't really, but it's a higher return rate than the Politburo at the height of the Soviet Union for, I mean, they didn't even,
No way. Is it really?
it's a higher return rate to those in office than the Soviet Communist Politburo, and those people didn't really have to worry about anything, and so they, I mean, our people that or whatever they are that rule us, just as job security, 1,000%, unless you turn on them, like that Madison Cawthorn guy, you know,
Yeah.
wheelchair. He came out and said, "Yeah, that's weird. You know, they do coke and there's orgies and stuff," which everybody knows.
Yeah.
And then immediately the Republicans said, Madison Cawthorn tells the truth, and it shows a picture of Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer, but he wasn't
Yeah.
talking about them. He was
Right.
talking about his own people. It's like people I used to respect, and you come up, and then they're like, "Let's get rid of this guy." You know, you said the quiet part out loud, you know, that there's weird stuff going on up here, and we do weird things, and we're, you know, I mean, it's just like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's Babylon, man. I mean, I told the young Republicans, I'm like, "Hey, focus on local, focus on state, focus on who your people are down here where you are, and work on you." I go, "When the Tower of Babel is falling over, get out of the way.
Oh,
You're trying to run and
beautiful.
prop it back up." And,
Yeah.
and all they want is just to arrest you, to get you another January 6th and put you away indefinitely, because that's what their goal is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if you're not gonna find any help there. I was telling people, don't go to, it's another reason I lost a bunch of listeners. Don't go to January 6th as a setup. Don't go.
Oh,
I'm like, "This seems bad. Why are they going again?" Well, I mean, Trump had like 4 rallies leading up to that, and I thought,
yeah.
"Man, they're going again?" And, I was like, "This can't be good." I was live on air that day. I was talking to one of my friends who's a big, you know, a big part of the Proud Boys, and look at what happened.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a sad thing for this country, and, yeah, please, folks, when there's a big thing in Washington, just do not go.
I like that. Don't try and catch the Tower of Babel. That's good. It's poetic. Last, so speaking of Trump and the FBI raids, what's your take on is this all? I mean, first of all, I see Trump's tweets, they get reposted. The guy is like insane, dude. The things he writes, I'm like, if I went to my lawyer when I went arrested and did the things that he did, they would drop me as their client because there's no, how do you represent, like, he's just a nut, you know, they stole it, they planted, okay, they found him. But what's your take on what's going on there?
I'll give you a little historical comparison, and it's probably not kind to the person I'm about to compare Trump to, but General Douglas MacArthur,
Okay.
roughly the same age as Donald Trump, or maybe just a little younger at the time of the Korean War.
Okay.
Now Douglas MacArthur's, I've read 2 biographies on him, and the guy was a god of war, genius for war. Going down in history with Alexander the Great. I mean, the guy was just, I mean, he was just everything, his wheels turned in his head for war. But he was head of the Japanese empire, what was left of it after World War II. They put him in charge, and he did that for 5 years. Wrote their constitution, by the way. He wrote everything.
No way, did he?
Yeah, he did. He was a genius. And but when the North Koreans, funded by Stalin, when they decided to cross the 38th parallel and go into South Korea, they called Douglas MacArthur in, and he did some brilliant things up front, like the landing at Incheon, which was like it was so rough seas and stuff. It was such a gamble to be able, if he could land there, they wouldn't expect it, and he could hit them and drive them back out of the occupied zones, and then maybe even across into the border of China. And he did, except he got arrogant. And he's like, they won't cross again, you know, they won't
Yeah.
come back. And will the Chinese join? Oh, our boys will be home by Christmas, and how this whole thing. Well, they did. They shocked his ass. They came back in, and Mao Zedong sent 250,000 Chinese.
Damn.
They didn't even have they didn't have enough rifles to go around for those troops. They just sent them across, and if whoever got shot in front of them, they would take their rifle. So our troops were just caught flat-footed fighting, you know, the Chinese and the communists. So MacArthur went a little mad. I mean, because his whole ego, everything was shattered, and he was in his 70s and had been fighting his whole life. And I don't think the brain works the same. I'm not saying that you can't do great things in your 70s. I'm saying You're not who you were in your 50s or 40s, you know, it's
Right.
the same
Right.
guy. So he started going a little extreme. And he would say, I mean, he started overriding President Truman. He was like, we're going to drop 70 atomic weapons on mainland China, and we're going to litter the Yalu River with nuclear waste, you know, so they can't cross. He was like, you know, surrender now or face extinction. And Harry Truman fired him. And
Damn.
the country went ballistic because he was like, hey, you can't fire the greatest general of all time. He's like, you know, he's like, I'm in charge. The people are in charge. You're not, you don't have control of the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know? So the funny thing about MacArthur too later is he wanted to outlaw war. He actually became a very anti-war guy. He begged Lyndon Johnson to stay out of Vietnam. He said the
Interesting.
Jungle was going to swallow him up. I love Douglas MacArthur. He
Amazing.
went grandiose, and his ego. And I think that was William Manchester wrote about this, and I've read it several times. It was talking about how the mechanism that was him, it was like a fissure ran through it, and it just collapsed on its own weight. Like that was his psychology.
Huh.
Trump used to be, I think, a really smart guy. I mean, he had to navigate all the things in New York, and I mean, I don't think he's. I mean, have you seen him like testifying before Congress in the '90s? It's really.
No, I
It,
haven't.
you should just go look it up. Like,
Okay.
it's not the same man. Like you're talking about, very well put together, very soft spoke. He becomes this character with his hands out like this later, kind of like the clownish thing. Like he's phoning it in, and I don't even know what to make of him. But I think just to wrap this up, I think he's in over his head, or if he's not an actor, then he's just literally crossed a barrier of mental health that I don't mean that to even be me. I don't like Trump because of what he did the last year. And I mean, he didn't do what he said he's going to do. So I'm not going to support him, but this isn't even a dig. Like, I just think the guy's lost it. And I think you're looking at the tweets coming out, and I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, this isn't like 2016 when you're saying that Ted Cruz's dad helped Lee Harvey Oswald. Which
right.
I'm watching this going, is this guy real? This is funny, you know, like this, like, because you want that hit back. And now he's like, I mean, it sounds, and I think Billy Ray sent me a text today about that. He said, it just sounds unhinged. And I go, it sounds unhinged. I mean,
That's a good word for it.
So I know there's a lot of Trump supporters that are always mad at me. And I'm like, I used to be one of you, but
yeah,
you know, one of us is in a coma and one of us is not.
I like that. Unhinged.
Unhinged.
Because if he's playing the role perfect, they picked the perfect person to play this role. But I think you're more there. He's so narcissistic. I don't think he'd be a difficult person to tell what to do. So I like the
weird. I mean, the Greeks had a bunch of stories about people like that. Like they called it, it was the juxtaposition between nemesis and hubris. Like, so hubris is arrogance, and it would create and summon a destroyer like Ghostbusters, you know, pick your destroyer, and they would nemesis would come and destroy you. So I don't, Trump's deal with this, everything's about him and everything's about, I mean, it's just, I understand. Look, he's been unfairly investigated and treated and all this stuff. And it just kind of goes back to, it doesn't matter who you put there now as president, because unless they're willing to fire the entire government and start all over again, you're not going to be able to carry out policy. There's no white hats.
Yeah. There's no white hats except us. We're the white hats.
Yeah. We're the white hats. We're alternative media, and just being a good person, and, you know, being kind to people, and, you know, spreading information. It's not over. I mean, these people, the problem with the world is that the worst people have a printing press, and they print money, you know, but you know what, is it just keeps getting worth less and less, and you just kind of wait them out, wait till they're done.
Well, I think that's also important. I did a show on Operation Phoenix, and I used to, or I still do sometimes. Think that the CIA and these groups, they're all you're omnipotent. You cannot stop them. You cannot fight them. And then I read and these stories of just the chaos that like the CIA had in Vietnam and everywhere. Like, it's insane. They're just regular people. They're regular people who want the glory. There's infighting, all this stuff. So that's something that I think people need to, if you ever get too down, they're like the dorks, dude. These are the people that go to the CIA. They're not, you know, an all-star or whatever. They're usually kind of odd because they have to pass all these tests. Like, these people aren't all powerful and can do whatever they want. They do have unlimited money, like you said, but
Yeah, it's just monopoly money run by monopolists, and that's the story of our time. And I actually cheer on like the wokeism, and that when they start saying like we're going to hire like the newest people will be, you know, non-binary, you know, people that identify as whatever furry or whatever
Yeah.
they are for the week. And you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's and like it has to be the first, so like everything has to top the last deal. And I'm like, I'm all for it because like I just eventually they'll never leave their own governmental buildings because it'll be like just to be a series of seminars, you know, about
Yeah.
sensitivity.
Yeah.
There's no one will ever get. It'll be a self-fulfilling navel gazing hurricane. So
Right.
Lynn, I'm all for it. Just 87,000 new IRS agents. Just hire the first. I mean, hey, what are you, a bigot? Hire the first or something, you know?
Oh, dude, 87. That's just terrifying as well. But anyway, so where can people find you, listen to you, all those things, Tony, and support your work?
You can find me at arterburn.news. That is my website. And I do a show called the Arterburn Radio Transmission, which is ART. And you can find that anywhere podcasts are found. I also have a podcast called Paratruther, which I'm real proud of. I just got through and I'm about to publish the episode I did with Chris Graves called Black Helicopters Over America, kind of some old 90s throwback conspiracy.
Nice.
And we talked about that. And I'm on a show called America Unplugged every Saturday over on Rockfin on the America Unplugged channel with Billy Ray Valentine, the very talented Billy Ray Valentine, if I will say so myself, host of the Infinite Fringe podcast, and the legendary Don Jeffries, author of Hidden History. I can't believe I'm on that panel, and we have a very surreal McLaughlin Group type show, which I've always wanted to do my entire life, and now we're on a panel show. We take the issues of the week and we decode and demystify the dystopia.
Oh man, you're like a poet sometimes. That's how I know you're a professional broadcaster. That was beautiful, whatever you just said there. But thank you. Thanks for joining us, Tony. Thanks to everybody listening. And we'll talk soon. Take care, guys. Peace.